Morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tired F1 Pod. We're back and better than ever, and I've got a surprise couple of guests. First of all, BaxtyB. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How's it going? Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Really good to have you on the show.
No,
If
thanks
you
for having me, man. Yeah.
if you guys don't know who BaxtyB is, what are you doing? Go find him on Twitter. The link's in the
Legend,
description
yeah.
below. And do yourself a favor. Go have a look at one of his spaces. They are epic. If you haven't got a clue about Formula One, that's where you need to head to because it's all the best views right there. And Amar, congratulations, mate.
Well, thank you. I am back, but I'm feeling really tired.
I
So
bet.
excuse all my takes today.
No more than usual from both of us, I'm sure. Uh, we're a few days out from the Japanese Grand Prix. Another win by Max Verstappen. Pole won the race, fastest lap, routine. What did you guys make of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was gonna ask if he actually made it to the track on time, right? That would be the only thing he probably didn't do, which is he was last to the track, but not last when he got there. I mean, at this point, right? Max seems invincible in many different ways. And what do you say, right? I mean, Melbourne was a lot of fun for me as the Ferrari fan, but it everything kind of came back to earth, back to reality. But it was a great race indeed. One of the things I love about Suzuka in general is it just feels like this one of these unique tracks, right? Like the drivers talk about it with such reverence. They love being there. They love the fans. The fans are super creative too. Like everything about it is awesome. So I thought it was a good race all in all. But yeah, Max being Max as always.
Actually, was that a predictable outcome, or was there anything for you to take out of Max's win?
I think Max winning is no surprise. I mean, we've seen that with Suzuka. You know, he is rapid around there, particularly in this ground effect era. I think Ferrari were probably a little bit closer than people were expecting. But not much more closer. Um, I think the big surprise really was actually on Saturday with how close Checo got in qualifying. I
Yeah.
mean, that was
Yeah.
that was really lovely to see. I mean, Max's last lap wasn't great by his standards, but um, yeah, I think Ferrari are probably the only team that I can see making a real gain on them this year.
Mm.
The RB20 was only what 3 tenths quicker
Yeah.
than McLaren, and this is the upgraded RB20 as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, but a pretty predictable one too, and what was actually quite a good race because of the tire
Oh,
offsets.
so, yeah. I mean, Science was talking about being sort of half as far away this season as he was last year, right? Like he said he was a second off last year and half a second this year, which I
Mm.
guess still, doesn't improve the racing necessarily, but it does tell us at least that Ferrari are making some progress. Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you guys about Max. Um, I think Suzuka and sort of great drivers tend to sort of go together. We've seen it before with sort of Senna.
Yeah.
We've seen it with sort of Schumacher in the old days as well. And I remember reading an article from maybe 2018, 2019, when Lewis had won a race there, and they made the point that um, the sort of gap that he created sort of masked the sort of they called it virtuosity of his drive. It's something that you don't see necessarily, and you don't appreciate it, but it's happening in the background, right? The great ones always have this, and Max is now starting to do that, I think, as well. Like you're not seeing the magic happen necessarily, you're just seeing the sort of 20-second gap. But the fact that Checo was 14 seconds behind him at the flag in the same car, despite being less than a tenth of him in qualifying, I think tells you sort of what he's actually doing. We are witnessing something pretty amazing, even if it isn't the most interesting thing to watch in the world. Sorry, Max fans. Um, cool. Let's talk about Ferrari a little bit. So Sainz qualified fourth, was it? And
Or
Charles qualified eighth, but there's only a tenth, just over a tenth between them in qualifying, and
mm.
both of them had some pretty cool races. Baxi, what did you make of that? Does Charles have a problem?
I wouldn't say so. I think there was clearly something not right on Saturday, because we know how quick Charlie is over one lap. I mean, realistically, at his best, he should have been near that sort of P3 region. I think the Red Bull in qualifying was just in a league of its own.
Yeah.
But in the race, he was unbelievable. Making that one stop work. And I've seen some onboards. He actually pushed for it himself. There was no from Ferrari. Let's do the one stop. We saw Charles finally asserting himself. For those that are more familiar with my work, you'll know that I've been wanting Charles to assert himself for the longest time, and I'm like, yes, starting to come together. And that P4 was richly deserved. And Carlos in that last stint, unbelievable as well. Yeah, I mean, at one point he was 1.3 seconds quicker than Leclerc. I know tire offsets, but on those hard tires, he was rapid.
Oh, he wanted
Rapid.
that. He wanted that podium, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is definitely a cometh the hour, cometh the man kind of situation. Like Carlos has really switched it on, which I think actually makes it pretty interesting. Because I mean, Amar, we talked about the seat at Red Bull a couple of weeks ago, and that we made the assumption that perhaps Perez is not going to be in that seat next year, but actually both of those guys seem to be gunning for the same seat, and they're both coming on song at the same time. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think Christian Horner was asked about this, right? At some point during the weekend, or right, I don't know, maybe in the midst of practices, and I think he said something to the effect of it is too soon, right? And I think it's fair to sort of think about the driver market in that sense. It is too soon because everyone that we thought would be losing a seat, I guess, or be gunning for that Red Bull seat is going to have to wait for a little bit, right? If in fact Checo is going to fall off, because he did exactly what the team would have asked him to be doing, right? I mean, there's nothing there. Of course, he's behind Max, but then that's to be expected. I think on the other side, right, just looking at what Carlos did, I think this is yet another example, Shaz, and you and I have debated this, that as races play out, it is starting to look more and more like this is the driver that the team should have kept, even though on the other hand, you have a 7-time world champion. So I know. But this is, as a Ferrari fan, in my gut, I'm starting to feel a little bit queasy now. Just
Okay.
nothing against Lewis. But I mean, look at the race he drove again. And both drivers, they drove well. I mean, Baxi, to your point, I was really happy to see Leclerc finally say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do, right? And to call it from within the cockpit. Yet you cannot ignore what Carlos did throughout the weekend, which is he seemed like he was more in sync with the car compared to Leclerc, right? We're all just kind of doing some hair splitting here, right? But he does seem to have that upper hand thus far.
Okay, mate, I've got to do this because actually we had a massive argument about this the other day. Amar here reckons that it's a massive mistake for Ferrari to be taking Lewis Hamilton next season because actually they've got balance at the moment. Please chime in. Help me out here.
We're talking fine margins here. I mean, Lewis hasn't lost anything, really, has he? I mean, we're not seeing the full best of Lewis because he's in a car that isn't allowing him to showcase those skills. But all the commentators that you see, and we're not just talking media pundits, we're talking Stefano Domenicali as well, basically saying Lewis hasn't lost anything. He's not lost a yard of pace. He's still as quick as he was. And that's the difference, really. You've got Lewis, who's a 7-time world champion, and Ferrari feel they've got all the pieces in place, and they've made a decision based upon what's happened in the last couple of years that Carlos has been up and down. He's not been as consistent, whereas Charles, okay, yeah, he might, go off because of his on the limit style, but he's been that he was that little bit more consistent over the last, certainly since the ground effect regs came in. And they feel that Lewis is that missing piece of the puzzle. I said last year when the rumors first circulated that they were going to get him, that Lewis is your last piece of the puzzle, not your first piece of the puzzle. Well, quicker than I thought, they seem to have that last piece ready to go in, and that is Lewis. My one point with Carlos is I'm loving what he's doing right now, absolutely. But how much of this is motivated by needing to get pen on paper for a contract wherever next year? How's he going to be when he's got that contract sorted? We saw with Bottas that once he had that Alfa Romeo contract sorted, his performance dipped just a little bit.
A lot, didn't it?
Yeah. In 20, I mean, I know he took a lot of engine penalties at the end of 21, but there was just that little dip in his performance because his future was sorted. That maybe an extra tenth he lost that he would have had if he was really driving for his future. So well, I'm sure Carlos will get a drive somewhere. When that pen hits the paper, will Carlos be able to maintain this level of performance? If he does, brilliant. If not, then we can start to look at this run of form with a lot more context.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say definitely that's the reason, but there is a sense, isn't there, that he's become a sort of back against the wall driver that when the chips are down, he'll go for it. But the problem is that you need to be that driver, race in, race out, all the time. And I guess there is a bit of an argument that Charles isn't really firing on all cylinders at the moment, but that was only a 10th in qualifying. And I think this is the first time he's had Sainz has had back-to-back qualifying victories against him, for I don't even know when that's happened before. So I mean I agree. I think it's more of a reflection on how well Carlos is driving at the moment, less of a sort of dig at Charles. We do need to talk about that race drive though from Leclerc. That was pretty impressive, especially when you consider that Charles is considered to be a qualifying specialist. That he's the unofficial fastest in F1. He showed some pretty impressive tire management skills on that medium. What do we think of that?
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, to leapfrog the Mercedes, the McLarens, right, and to just kind of be there. I mean, he would have been fighting for a podium had Carlos not put in new tires, right? He would have been there, right? I thought this was brilliant. I mean, again, what Charles showed in this race in particular was that he can manage a race. Like that's something I don't recall having seen a lot of him in the past. Not to say that he has not done a brilliant job in races where he has had the chance to win or to be on the podium, but this was something special, right? To come out right from where he was and to be able to make those last. And to be honest, that the race had so many of these complications throughout the race, right? That there's so much with the tire offsets that I didn't quite know whether Charles would actually kind of make himself kind of climb himself up the field or not. But he managed to do that, and that was just brilliant. So I think the Ferrari drivers, for me, did the best job given the circumstances that they had, and I think both of them were really good. But Charles was something special in this race. Really
I mean, I do
was.
want to fight back a little bit against the sort of managing the race, right? Just to Baxty's point about Leclerc sort of pushing the team, and this is what we've asked for, right? So I presume you saw the same clip that I did, right? Which was somebody had watched the entire onboard from Leclerc's car, and then they cut the bits out and pasted them from where he had his conversation with the pit wall. That was obviously never played out during the world feed, and it does kind of paint the picture that there's a little bit of stuff sort of left on the editing room floor when this stuff comes out. And how often is Charles actually doing that we just miss? I mean, I don't know.
It'd be interesting to see to ride on board with Charles in a race. I mean, I don't normally watch the onboards.
Yeah,
I'm
me
not
neither. Me
somebody
neither.
typically that does that. I know there are people that do, but
Mm.
it might be interesting just to jump on board with somebody, like Charles, like Lewis, and see what it's like from their perspective. And obviously there's stuff that they'll leave out all over the place. I mean, yeah, one example is that we didn't know about the damage that Lewis got until right at the end when Bono said, "Oh, you had a end plate problem." It's like, oh, that would have been useful to know. World feed, thank you. Like, great, thanks.
Doesn't fit the narrative though, man, does it? That's the problem.
No, not at all.
Definitely doesn't fit
We
the
have to try
narrative.
to make these races more exciting when Max is not even being shown on the TV.
That would have made it
Honestly,
more exciting, I think.
I swear the most we saw Max was when they did that little camera in camera shot
Yep.
on the timing
Yeah.
stick, and it's like literally that was the most we saw him. Like,
Red Bull's gonna have sponsors pull out just because they can't be shown on TV
Oh
anymore.
my
They're
God.
just no
yeah.
space.
What I would say about Ferrari, though, I think what's been evident from these first four races, and even with Behrman in the car in Saudi, I would say to an extent, is that they have cleared that midfield fight for P2. It is very much Red Bull, Ferrari. Then you can start having a little mix below that, but Ferrari clearly in second place. And credit to them because at times last year it looked pretty bleak.
Yeah.
Whereas now they're getting everything in order. Fred Vasseur is doing a brilliant job. And if the rumor's
Yeah.
true, they're signing 6 key people from Mercedes. Keep an eye on that. There's obviously Newey hanging around in the background. Things are looking good for Ferrari.
Things are looking great. I'm glad you brought up Fred Vasseur, Baxi, because Shez and I have debated that as well. In fact, it was one of our first debates, I think, when Mattia Binotto was let go. And I think what you're seeing now is the fruits of that hard labor having paid off. And
Yeah.
last year they decided to take a step back. I think pretty much what Mercedes need to do now is kind of do the same thing in some ways, which is to just admit to yourself that, look, none of this is working, right? And then start working yourself back a certain way with a new perspective, with a new mindset. And I'm just happy to see this happen, because I keep walking into these races thinking, well, something's gonna happen, and something bad has not happened yet. So I, for one, am delighted.
Yeah, I mean, I think somehow Ferrari have managed to get like everything right, like
It's really
operationally,
amazing. Yeah.
strategically, technically, everything seems to be like working. I'm like you, I
Depends who
feel
you ask.
God.
Well, some Leclerc fans will tell you that team orders, but just my little dig. It's
Oh,
fine.
well, let them wait until next year. I mean, I wonder what that's going to look like next year with team orders. Like,
Oh,
see, this is my point, by the way.
mate.
I mean, it just,
Yeah,
Let them race. Let them
yeah,
race.
exactly.
let
And
them
I,
race, yeah.
I think those two guys are not going to have the problems that you think they're going to have. I think they'll work just fine together. But it will just be fireworks to watch.
Well,
Which,
I thought
but
it was evident in this race too, right? When Carlos, when after his last pit stop, right? I think he asked the question, "Are we racing or not?" And I think the answer was yes, we are. And the podium is in sight, and kind of go for it. And I mean, I didn't know that it was. Look, it was more straightforward, right? Given the fact that there was a tire offset, and it never looked like Leclerc would have
yeah,
had a fighting chance.
yeah. I
But
mean, science was coming past, right? And that radio message to me sounded very much like, "Don't fight him. Just you're fighting
just let him
Lando."
go. Don't do Monza, right?
I think what they were worried about was that if Charles had basically destroyed his tires
Yeah,
fighting Carlos, they could have lost
Yeah,
P4.
Lando comes past
to
him, right?
Mando.
I
Yeah,
don't necessarily see that as a team order. I think it was just a subtle reminder to not,
yeah. Not be
just
an idiot.
be sensible about
Be
this.
sensible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in Australia, that was very much a team order of just hold
Yeah,
position, and then obviously
yeah,
his tires went all over the shop. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just in summary, I'm really impressed with Carlos. I think he's made some big strides in qualifying in the past couple of races. Melbourne, I kind of expected. Japan, I'm surprised by because this is a really limited track, and I kind of thought that Charles would have him. Charles probably made some mistakes in terms of the way he prepped his tires, and we saw that in the Sky
mm,
interview, didn't we, with Damon and Natalie Pinkham. um, that perhaps Charles didn't play his tires the way that he should have. Uh, but in the race, but both of them just drove an absolute blinder, and it's starting to show how good Ferrari are. Just want to segue as we've started to hint at towards the other team that we thought should have been fighting at the front, but are looking more and more like a nailed on midfield team. Mercedes-Benz. What the heck is going on?
it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag because this was a really positive weekend, basically undone by a horrendous strategic call post the red flag. Because in quali, we improved our lap time by over a second from just 6 months ago. That's great stuff. Really good. And in comparison to most of our rivals, we were kind of improving at the same sort of rate. Whole last year was a 138.8 or something. And I mean, loads of cars cleared that, but we were in that mix as well. We cleared that, particularly with Lewis. But in the race, they took a risk. It didn't work. And unfortunately, it's kind of left us in a position where we look like we've got a bit of egg on our face. But I think there are positives to take from the weekend that actually they seem to have worked out what the problems are with the car. And now they know that they've got these correlation issues. They can start to kind of work on that whilst also trying to extract performance from the car. And yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about where we go from here. China might be a little bit tricky with that long straight, but we'll have to see how that works out.
Oh, yeah, am I?
Yeah, I don't, I have more questions about Mercedes than answers, right? I'm glad that Baxi you're optimistic, but I don't quite know what to make of them. I mean, their strategy call was kind of weird, and it felt like it was going to pay off at some point, but it never quite did in some way, and I don't quite know what they were thinking about it. So it feels like with every single race, we're unraveling a new issue or a new problem, something that is not something we wouldn't associate with a team like Mercedes, right? For having been at the top of the game for as long as they have. I was kind of taken aback by what Toto said in post race and just sort of talking about Max being gone and sort of having this very negative narrative to them, and I don't know if that's a sign of where the team's at, right? I get this feeling that when you have a team that's dominated the sport in quite the way that it has, it's now starting to unravel. And I know that as good as they are, they will not completely fall off the charts. I cannot believe that that would happen. But this race was a bit of a head scratcher for me, and I don't know how that you can be optimistic in Shanghai, just like you said, with that long straight there. But I mean, also listening to Lewis on the radio, I mean, him wanting to give up the spot to George just because he was not going to be in the mix there. All of these are just sort of telltale signs for an outsider like me to say, hey, are they really with it or not? I know there's a bigger discussion to be had about that, but it was a bit of a head scratcher of a race for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you about Toto Wolff's comment. I don't think I'm seeing necessarily anything right now, certainly strategically and operationally, that wasn't evident when Merck were in their dominant years. Like they would make strategy errors like this. I remember Austria 2018.
Yeah,
They do
they
dumb
do.
things in strategy all the time. I didn't necessarily have a problem with them going for the one stop, but I mean, hedge your bets a little bit, guys. Just you've got two drivers,
Put it
both
on
of whom
splits.
are
Yeah,
absolutely
exactly.
on top of their game. Just split the strategy, see which way they go. Go on, go on,
Yeah, I
Aston.
just think with that one, they kind of left themselves in a bit of a sticky position with the tyres because they both started on the mediums
That's
and
right.
they only had one set each.
Yeah,
And I think they
yeah,
thought, well, let's just go on the hards. Maybe they could have stuck one of them, kept them on the mediums, but I mean, they would have done at least a few corners of racing and then had to go back in round with the red flag and everything else. So yeah,
yeah.
it
But
was a tricky
other
one.
people did that though, didn't they? Other people kept their mediums on and kept
I
going.
think so, but I think others had more sets of mediums as well,
Yeah,
which
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so yeah, it was. I saw Shove talk about this after the race, and he basically said that his quote was is that they didn't feel like there was a threat from behind, so they felt that they could take the risk and see what happened. But then what they got screwed on was the slightly warmer track temperatures. We know
Yeah.
that James Allison has said that in warm conditions currently, that car just does not work. There are
Mm.
tire eating on the rear, and that is what ultimately cost them. The track was just that little bit too warm in the first stint
Stint. Yeah.
for them to actually make that one stopper work. When the track cooled down, they actually had pretty decent pace in comparison to their rivals. But it was the first stint that absolutely
Yeah,
killed them.
it
And
killed him, didn't it?
yeah, and with Lewis, what I will say is the reason he asked George to go past was because his car was understeering all over the place, and he had the front wing damage, which we didn't know at the
We didn't
time.
know that. Yeah.
But he was
But
doing that because he was like,
yep.
"I'm holding him up here, and
Yeah.
might
Might as
might
well.
lose position." Yeah,
Yeah, which I think was absolutely the right move and pretty
yeah,
magnanimous in the end. Like there's no point holding up your teammate if you've got a car that's understeering like an oil tanker. But there is one thing that I picked up on that, right? And I guess again that comes back to what Mercedes are doing with their aero, right? Go back to 2021, right? In Jeddah, Lewis lost half his front wing and didn't even seem to
Didn't
notice.
matter. Yeah.
Here, he's
yeah.
lost a dive plane and he's had to basically give up his place. I mean, I do get the fact that actually he made up for that and started to towards the end of stints he was actually quicker than George across every stint that he ultimately did. But that's a huge amount of time lost just for a front dive plane, surely.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And then what's really weird is that Toto's saying there's 70 points more downforce on the car this year. And then you're like, well, what? how are we still in the same position that we were? Surely we should be quicker. I mean, we are quicker, but yeah, obviously we can't account for what our rivals do. But it's just like, okay, that's a bit weird. I don't know where. I saw a few people sort of theorizing on that and basically saying, well, he's either lying or there's a really fundamental problem with the car.
with the mechanical platform again, right? Which is I think I saw Obbs's Dr. Obbs's little thing on that. Again, Dr. Obbs is another guy that if you don't follow him, do it now.
Very good.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I agree. But the only problem with that argument is, I mean, we didn't see any porpoising from the car, like this weekend, right? That didn't seem to be the problem. But I mean, this is me as an amateur trying to theorize as well. So I have no idea, but there's clearly something not quite right. Although I take your point that Lewis seemed much happier. It was nice to see him sort of do well in qualifying, sort of admit afterwards I wasn't running any experimental setups or anything like that, and I was able to get the most out of myself, out of the car. That I guess was encouraging. But there's one thing that I have to say, right? Like, actually, you're a Mercedes fan, right? And Lewis is going to cut a slightly odd figure this season, I think, because he's gonna say stuff like that in a press conference that, oh yeah, I feel more comfortable in the car and I'm happier with the direction we're taking. Lewis doesn't particularly want a strong Mercedes, I don't think, in this season, because for me, he's not winning a championship, is he? Like, this car is nowhere near winning a championship. Does he really want to build them up to a point where they can challenge for race wins and championships?
Wow.
At the point that he's going to head off to another team?
Well, it depends on who's driving the other car, because if it's Max, then yeah, you want to slow that thing down. But if it's anyone else, he might feel more confident. No, I'm joking. Lewis is the kind of guy that he doesn't care who the challenger is. He'll race them and back himself to beat them in whatever machinery he's in. I think it's just the inner competitor in him. He just wants to be in a faster car. Yeah, and also he's built a relationship with these guys over the course of 10 years. He wants to help them do better so they start getting bonuses and helping them, prosper and thrive. That's the kind of guy Lewis has always been, all for one, one for all for one, or whatever the Three Musketeers quote is. But that's it. That's who he is. So yeah, I think at some point he is going to have to draw back. And I saw him talking about this, that there's going to be a transition period and he needs to have that conversation with Toto. But right now it's not happened yet.
Yeah, it can't. I mean, they have to push the car forward. Otherwise, it's going to be an abject season for him and the rest of the team sort of trundling around.
I think once they've got his replacement nailed down, then that conversation will take place.
Yeah. Cool. We should probably talk about some other teams and drivers. We definitely need to talk about Yuki. What did you guys make of his performance this weekend?
Yeah, great drive. No, really great drive, and deserved that point. And beat Daniel Ricciardo again.
Closer this weekend though, right?
Yeah, there wasn't much in it, but it was the difference between Q3 and Q2, and that's so important.
Yeah. Sorry, Amar, I interrupted you.
No, it's all good. I think it was really nice. It was a really cool moment to see him score points in his home Grand Prix. I mean, only been done before by, I think, Kamui Kobayashi, right? Is that correct? Do I have that right? Or
well, he was the last one.
He was the last one to do it, right? Yeah. I think it's pretty cool when home fans get to see their driver score a point or be on the podium. Of course, is better, but I mean, he's making this case for being a better replacement for Checo if that ever happens than Daniel is, right? I mean, at least between the two of them. So I don't see why. I don't see why Daniel would have the upper hand at this point. He's had a tough stretch thus far, and I don't know if we want to talk about his crash. I mean, that was kind of interesting. Huh? What do you guys think about that?
It's a slightly tricky one. I'm not sure I completely agree with Ant Davidson in comms. Albon has a funny habit of being in the wrong place at the wrong time when it comes to accidents, and it's never his fault, but you kind of think, outside of turn 4 in Austria, is that really the place you want to be? It was kind of more of the same here, I thought. What do you think, Baxty?
Classic, like one incident, really. I think the stewards made the right call in taking no further action. I think, you know, both of them admitted to making a mistake. You know, Daniel didn't know where Alex was, and Alex realized maybe I shouldn't have been where I was. But you know, they're racing and trying to get out of the melee, and then inadvertently cause the melee. I mean, I think Alex's crash is going to cause quite serious knock-on problems for Williams, but it's a lap one incident. You've always got to treat them a little bit differently to other racing incidents, just because it's the nature of a race start.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree that look, there was a lot of hustle bustle through turn 1, 2, and 3. These are big cars and they're pretty unwieldy on heavy tanks of fuel. So there was a lot of that going on across the field into the S's. But you kind of have to think like Daniel wouldn't have been in that situation if he qualified a bit higher. And yeah, you know, I take my own point that it wasn't a huge difference between him and Yuki, and he can be encouraged by that. But really, if his car is able to get that high on the grid, then that's kind of what he should be doing.
Well, and Chess, so sorry to interrupt you, but just so you know that the whole thing that when bringing Daniel back was that he was going to overperform Yuki, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're not just talking about, you know, getting the car into Q3. But we're talking about him actually taking that step forward for RB, which we're not seeing. That cannot be debated.
Yeah, I agree. But Yuki keeps proving all the doubters wrong, like every single season. Like, you know, he was meant to be shown how to drive the car by Nick De Vries.
Right. Yeah.
And then you know, Ricardo was gonna do the same thing. And mate, he's not messing around, is he? He's still not gonna get that Red Bull seat. It doesn't I think he could probably win
Poor
the
guy.
I think he could probably win the championship in the RB and they still wouldn't give him a seat. Yeah, there's just nothing he can do, poor guy.
He's going to Aston Martin, isn't he? Let's be frank. As soon as that Honda partnership starts, he's in. He's in.
Brilliant segue, because I really, really do want to talk about this. Did you guys see the track map for Fernando versus Stroll at the end of Quali 1? Oh,
what
my
the S's?
God.
And that was it for Lance.
It's turn 1, 2. That's it. That's all Lance had.
Yeah.
And I reckon Alonso's kicking himself for not beating him through there as well. Awful.
Yeah.
What is he doing in that seat, man?
Aston would be clearing Mercedes if they had a better second driver, you know, because Alonso is taking it to Mercedes almost every single race, and Lance is just, I mean, Australia he was decent, but the other 3 races just kind of hanging around the lower midfield, and I sold all my stock in Lance Stroll. You know, I was a big believer in him. I thought 2020 was the year where he really broke out and showed what he could do, but since then it's just been business as usual. He's not going to go anywhere, but for me, I think if Aston Martin want to get serious about winning championships, they got to ditch him.
I mean, I don't know how much of this is because like Fernando is just so much better than everybody else that rocks up in the car next to him.
But wouldn't you want to be a fly in the wall in the Stroll household when these conversations are happening? I mean, at some point, given how competitive Lawrence Stroll is, and keeps reminding us about the resources that he's pouring in, which is tons and tons of resources, and the aim is to be championship winning year in and year out. I mean, I kind of wonder when that father-son conversation happens at some point in the near future to say, hey, is this something you really want to do? Because Lance Stroll now strikes me as someone that is probably not enjoying himself racing. I mean, there's been a few things here and there said about it. I don't know if it's just rumor mill or conjecture in some way, but it doesn't feel like he's there anywhere, right? And I think if you had a Sebastian Vettel in there, or if you had someone else in there, I think you're right, BaxtyB. They could be beating Mercedes. They might be very competitive up there.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in that. That there has to be that conversation between the Strolls, but I don't know if the ultimate aim for Lawrence Stroll is to win a championship, or if it's to win a championship with my son. You know what I mean? Because if that's the plan, if plan A is win a championship with my son, Aston are going to be doing this for years, I think. You know,
but he has to know, right? He has to know, right? I mean, he's you don't get to where he's at, just sort of, not thinking through these things. I mean, he's got to be knowledgeable enough to know he can kind of see this, right? I mean, he loves the sport, right? And he understands the history of it. He understands what all of this means, right? And you cannot tell me that that's what he's actually expecting will happen, is he?
maybe, but maybe it's just another challenge. It's a massive bit of credit for him if he manages to get a world championship out of Lance Stroll.
Okay.
Get him in the WEC. I'd love to see Lance in the hypercar and get doing the WEC project. I think that
Okay.
might be more.
I think he has
But
no interest. I think he has zero
probably,
interest.
yeah, that's probably true. But maybe step aside and do that for a couple of years and then try and find his way back into Formula One with another team. Potentially, he could go to Andretti and say, "Look, I've got my dad's sponsorship separate from Aston Martin." I said Checo Perez would be a great driver for Andretti. Lance could potentially fit that bill if and when they get in. So he's not a world championship and constructors championship winning driver either. I feel like, he's in a tight battle. He's not the guy you need. If Aston Martin build a car in 26 that's like the RB's Red Bull now, then yeah, fine, doesn't matter. But they need a strong number one. They've got Fernando for now.
Yeah.
But I just don't see where the future is for that team at the moment, and we'll have to see.
But yeah, I agree with you. All of the other building blocks are there, but that's the one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb, isn't it? That are you taking this seriously, or are you doing this for another reason? Okay, finally, we should talk about Williams. Some fun and games over the course of the weekend. Logan Sargent, poor guy, as usual, given the short end of the stick, ended up in Alex Albon's repaired car for qualifying, but then managed to dump it in the wall in FP1 and was running none of the upgrades for the rest of the weekend. So maybe can't be blamed completely for that qualifying performance, but there it is. And then another accident in the race as well.
It's not good. It's Williams needed a clean weekend and they got anything but. It's a classic case of when it rains, it pours. I mean, Alex crashing on lap one and damaging another chassis as well. They've only got two of them. I mean, when Will Buxton is basically memeing you, you're in trouble. Because just saying to James Vowles on the post show, just going, "Well, we hope you have two cars in Shanghai." It's like, and there's an element of seriousness to that as well. What is going on? What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, go on, Amar.
Well, I can think of so many jokes right now. That's all I can think. Well, first of all, where is that Excel sheet? What's that going to look like after this race? What did they have? But I mean, maybe call Valtteri Bottas, see if UberShare can get them a car. I don't know.
Sorry, mate. Listen, I think your dad joke is loaded, my friend.
Well, listen, I mean, look, this is I mean, could it have gone more worse for them? I mean, I don't know. And this it's just crazy. I don't are they going to show up in Shanghai with another chassis? Do they have one? Is that I mean, I know we're joking about it, but they don't have one, right? As of today.
They said they sent that chassis back to Grove to get fixed in the gap between Japan and China, right? So I mean, we'll see. But look, I do have sympathy for them, and the Excel spreadsheet thing is a fun little tidbit to latch onto. But the reality of this is that we are in a cost cap era, and no matter how much cash Doralton have pumped into the company, there's a limit to the amount of infrastructure that they can tangibly buy and they can upgrade in a short period of time. And this team has been underfunded for such a long time. You guys remember 2018 when Paddy Lowe had his first season as technical director, and they turned up late. Was it 2018 or 2019?
2019, they missed the first test, I think.
Yeah, it was 2019.
Yeah. But I mean, the rot was already setting in by then.
Exactly.
2018 was an absolute disaster zone of a season. Yeah,
but nothing had got better from 2019 to now. Okay, they got their car to the tests on time, but they were lucky they had a Mercedes power unit in the back of their car. Otherwise, they'd have been literally nowhere. But that does take time, and the winter that they had between 23 and 24, from what it sounds like, was an absolute mess. Because I know what it's like in the NHS or any medical department, any medical service, when you go from one operating system to another, it's a mess for the first sort of month or so, and to kind of have to get all of these guys that have been at your team for like, these guys are like Williams lifers. They've been there for 30, 40 years. They've been using this Excel spreadsheet like it's the pinnacle of technology for God knows how long. And now they've been given like a space age bit of technology to work out how to actually track their systems and stuff, their parts and stuff, to try and get everybody one on board that this is the right thing to do. But why are the management spending money on this thing? We've got a system that works, blah. And then get everyone trained up on it as well in the space of a winter. I mean, they only had like 6 months. In a cost cap era, this is what's going to happen. They don't have the extra cash, having spent all that money, to just have a chassis ready to go like that. Can we
And
blame them?
the problem is they've had $2 million worth of crashes already. I mean, yeah, like, and that's cost. That could be upgrades just that they can't bring to the car because they've now got to repair it, and it's eating into their cost cap as well.
This is it. And you know, as much as Alex made the mistake in Australia, just if you give that context, that like they need the money to be able to then pump it back in again for upgrades and things like that. Is it any wonder that they made tough calls about sort of putting Alex in the car in Australia? I know it didn't pay off, but you can understand the logic even if you don't agree with it. I'm less sold on the giving Logan the repaired chassis in Japan, but even that you can understand why they're doing it. And
yeah, but ironically, that's the chassis that's now not is going to be repaired too, right?
I see what you're saying. It's a problem with the chassis, not the drivers, isn't it? I hear what you're saying. Yeah, it's definitely.
Well, that does beg the question: could Alex have been a little less aggressive at the start? I mean, normally you wouldn't say that. Yes, racers got to race and they have to follow their instincts and all of that, but this is a pretty unique situation too, right? So maybe there's an argument to be made about, Alex maybe not being that aggressive in that moment, right? No, still go for it.
No.
So now we're gonna go to China and he's gonna be driving Logan's repaired chassis from I don't know which one, like, and then Logan's gonna be sitting there doing what? Nothing.
Very real possibility. I can see Logan not driving in China at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got to thank all the sponsors.
And then if Logan keeps not performing, then when he turns 18, they'll stick Kimi Antonelli in the car.
Okay. I thought you were going to bring that up, and the problem with Kimi being in that seat is that the same thing's going to happen. It's not like they've magicked up a chassis that's gonna
True.
Right. So is he going to be in the same situation as well? That if there's an accident, they've only got one chassis. Is he going to miss races, whether it's him or Alex that's binned it? I mean, you'd have to expect that if Alex bins it and Kimi's in the other seat, that they wouldn't have to have this conversation necessarily. But there is the possibility that if Kimi bins it, then that's his weekend done.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that.
Okay.
Tough decisions to make at Williams.
Tough decisions to make. It's a bit of a downer to end on, but we did have some fun stuff to talk about. Again, BaxtyB, thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing to have you, mate. All your insights.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure.
You can find BaxtyB on Twitter at BaxtyB. Definitely turn up to one of his spaces. They are brilliant. And if you've got something to say after a race, definitely join in at that point, because you'll definitely get your chance to have a chat. And Amar, amazing to see you.
Thanks for allowing me to be on
your own channel.
All good.
Thanks, man. Cool. Thanks, everyone. As usual, like, subscribe, comment. We read all of them. We even reply to most of them. But we'll see you again in the next one. Thanks very much.